No American should go hungry in 2025. It's wild to me. We're one of the richest nations and we still have such a huge hunger problem. Every human deserves groceries. Every human deserves to eat. And Lemontree is working on that.
What if feeding millions of hungry Americans is largely a data problem just waiting to be solved? Today's guest is turning this bold vision into reality, building AI systems that connect over 450,000 households to food assistance daily. Stay tuned to discover how sophisticated algorithms are breaking down barriers to dignity and nourishment across America.
Welcome to Socially Conscious AI, where we explore the cutting-edge innovations transforming our world for the better and bring you conversations with brilliant minds and ethical pioneers who are harnessing AI's power to address humanity's greatest challenges. I'm Valencia Cardoso.
And I'm Roman Burkott. Today we're talking to Samuel Cole, the Chief Technology Officer at Lemontree Foods, a groundbreaking nonprofit that has used artificial intelligence and innovative technology to connect over 450,000 households to free food assistance. With a background spanning major tech companies like Kickstarter and ActBlue, Samuel now applies his engineering expertise to solve one of America's most pressing social challenges. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Appreciate having you here, Sam. And just thinking about your career, right? And the journey you've had along the way, going from Kickstarter to ActBlue and now Lemontree, right? That's been a pretty cool evolution. And I think specifically when it comes to Lemontree, what drew you to applying technology to food insecurity? And was there any path along the way where you recognized that this is a problem that you felt like technology could meaningfully address?
Yeah, so after I had worked at ActBlue, I sort of worked at ActBlue from 2017 until the beginning of 2021. I was embedded with the Biden campaign, helping them build fundraising tools for the 2020 election. And then after the 2020 election happened, I sort of felt like I had accomplished my tour of duty. I did what I set out to do, which was get a Democrat into office. And so I started looking around for other projects that I could take on, particularly around bringing my for-profit startup expertise to people who had maybe a little less disposable income that deserved the same level of dignity and hospitality that I was providing at my for-profit jobs at Kickstarter or ActBlue. I wanted to bring that into the nonprofit space so that finding a food pantry was just as simple as booking an Uber outside or getting an Instacart order together or looking up a place on Yelp. I think that people who are experiencing food insecurity deserve software that's just as usable as those folks that are placing an order on Seamless.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Would you mind kind of helping us understand the scope of food insecurity in America and maybe touch on why existing food resources aren't reaching the people who need them?
Yeah, so right now there are millions of people in America who are experiencing food insecurity, and many of them don't know how available food pantries are. We looked up a funny statistic. There's actually more food pantries than McDonald's in America by a large margin. Yeah. And so it's actually easier to find a food pantry than a McDonald's, but most people have no idea. And if they do know, a lot of them have stigma and ideas about the kind of people that are supposed to go to a food pantry, and they feel like a food pantry is for somebody else. And so we felt if we build software that made going to a food pantry just as accessible and comfortable as going to a McDonald's, it would be able to help so many people who, for whatever reason, spending their hard-earned money on food doesn't make sense that month when they have other more pressing things. They should just be going to a food pantry to get that same food for free.
As I understand it, you're using the AI to connect the people, your users, with you're helping match them to actual pantries. Can you talk a little bit about how AI is contributing to that solution?
A lot of our peers in the nonprofit and for-profit space, they see this problem of, okay, there's all these people and they have food pantries around them. Maybe the problem is that they don't know where the food pantries are. So a lot of folks, they'll just take all the food pantries and they'll put them on a map. But the problem is that you can't really imagine how your experience of the food pantry will be. Some food pantries are open on really strange schedules, like maybe only once a month, every couple of weeks, every other Tuesday, the third Thursday when the volunteer feels like unlocking the doors. And so what we did is we built a recommendation model, much in the same way that Netflix shows you shows that they think you should watch, or Yelp shows you restaurants they think you should go to. We use a recommendation model to find food pantries that best fit your life and your needs, using real-time reviews from your peers as they go to those food pantries. We check in with them afterwards and we see how their experience was, and all of that information feeds our model.
How does that human in the loop approach improve the AI system? Like, what have you learned about the gap between the data and the lived experience?
Another problem that a lot of people face when they're just collecting data from the field is often their only sources are sometimes a government agency, or if they're lucky, there's a food bank network that maintains a list of the food pantries they distribute food to. But this data is sometimes months, if not years out of date. And it exists on like printouts that are like handed out and distributed between these different partners. And so by the time they end up getting to clients, they can often be woefully inaccurate because the food pantry has changed the schedule for whatever reason, or even just momentary changes where perhaps a volunteer is sick that week and so they aren't able to unlock the doors. So what we've done is we use real-time feedback where after somebody visits the food pantry, we ask them how their experience was. And sometimes they tell us, unfortunately, it always feels bad when it happens, but they tell us that they got to the food pantry and the doors were locked because our information was inaccurate. And when we get that back, we use our team of human researchers that call the food pantry up, send them an Instagram message, send them a Facebook message. In some cases, I heard from our research team, they'll actually call the gas station across the street and be like, hey, can you look out your window and tell me if there's a line for a food pantry at the church across the street? And we'll do all of that research to use the client's feedback to inform our database for the next client that will go to that food pantry next.
As I understand it, your platform also includes a concept of a hospitality specialist.
Yeah. So the core of Lemontree and actually how we started was originally as a text helpline that our founder, Kasumi Quinlan, ran out of her bedroom. So people would call in and it would ring Kasumi's phone in her bedroom and she would help them figure out their food access needs. So that sounds a lot to me like customer support, the same level of customer support that a company like Zappos or
Right.
Amazon or Airbnb needs to do every day. And so that's our DNA is strong, 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 strong customer support, where we have a team of specialists that are waiting on the line for you to text in and explain what your experience is, what your issue is, what your needs are. And they're all top trained customer support specialists who will deal with each issue with hospitality and support, which has been so huge in the food access network, in the food access world, because that just doesn't exist at these small community-based organizations. They don't have the capacity to run a support team in addition to the really important work that they're doing of distributing food. So if somebody has a bad experience, who are they going to call? Who are they going to email? Like there's no support at, email address that people can talk to when they experience an issue at a food pantry. So that's what Lemontree does. We provide that food helpline. Our website's foodhelpline.org, and we are the food helpline that responds to them and helps them work through those issues, up to finding maybe an alternative food pantry to get their food needs met for that week.
That's awesome. They must appreciate that human touch. And just thinking about scale, right? I understand that Lemontree has connected nearly 500,000 households to food assistance, right?
Yeah.
And when you look at the scale of impact, what are some of the sort of technical decisions that you feel are like critical to achieving that, but like also maintaining the quality and the dignity for like your users?
Yeah, so that brings us back into the topic of your show, the AI and computer assisted learning that we're able to do. We use a lot of computer assistance to help our people, deliver the best hospitality that they can. And so, including like that AI recommendation model that finds good food resources nearby, that's a computer model that our people will use to pass along to the clients who need food, as well as automated software. So it's a combination of automated software that helps our human specialists do the best work they can and quickly understand the situations on the ground and provide that really personalized and hospitable support to our clients, as well as self-serve tools such as our dashboard that clients can go to look at all of the food pantries that they have, and also a calendar that we built so that you can look at your schedule for the upcoming days and weeks, and products like our reminders. Our reminders has turned into a hugely popular part of our website where you can actually subscribe to a resource and we'll text you the day before it opens that like, hey, don't forget you were planning to go to this food pantry tomorrow. Make sure you go. So it's that combination of computers that assist humans along with those self-serve tools that have allowed us to reach so many people with such a tight-knit startup team.
Through all of that, like, is there anything specific that you look for when you're thinking about success or like just measuring that, the connection numbers?
It's a couple things. The easiest thing to get sort of sucked into, especially in the startup world, is just pure impact. We want to positively improve as many people's lives as we can. We know there's millions of hungry people, and we're building tools to help them. So, how many people are using Lemontree to help them find and manage their food access? But in addition to that, there's also the quality of the support we're providing. So, one metric that's super important for us is just after they go to the food pantry, we ask them how their experience was and measuring to make sure that that experience was extraordinary. They got excellent food and they received it with excellent hospitality is key. And also just knowing that our data was accurate and they were able to like find a food pantry that was open when we said they would be open.
Do you run into any issues with when it comes to like bias? Like I understand like food insecurity like disproportionately affects like marginalized communities, right? And like, is there
Yeah.
anything that you have to do specifically to ensure that like any your systems don't perpetuate any existing inequalities or create barriers where people need help the most?
Yeah, because our model is fed into by our review system, if somebody has a negative experience, such as bias when they visit the food pantry, something that I'm always concerned with is a lot of food pantries are based in religious practices. So if somebody comes who doesn't fit
Mm.
that religious practices beliefs, then making sure that they're treated well is super important to me. And the way that we ensure that is the people who leave us reviews, if you have a negative experience, you leave a bad review. And that feeds straight into our model, and our model knows not to recommend that food pantry to the next person.
When you're working with these populations, do you get any questions around like data privacy and trust, or like how do you approach any of these concerns? Like, especially when people might be hesitant to share their personal information, like being connected to food insecurity.
So, first of all, when you onboard, we only need two pieces of information to get you started using Lemontree, and that's your name and an address. And for the name, all we need the name for is just to make our text messages to you a little more personalized so we can add a personalized touch. So we make it super clear when you're being onboarded that we only need a first name, we don't need your last name. And the first name doesn't have to be your real name. Like you can put in any name there. We don't care. Nobody's going to check your ID at any point. Like you can put in any name you want, or you can leave it blank. And that just means our messages will be a little less personalized. And I think you'll get over it. It'll be fine. And then the other thing we ask for is your address. And again, in the onboarding, we make it super clear that the only thing the address is for is just to feed our recommendation model, because our recommendation model tries to find food pantries that are easy for you to get to. And so it doesn't need to be your real address. If you live in an apartment building, you don't have to put your apartment number in there. We aren't going to mail you anything. So just the street address of your apartment building's fine. And even if you want to use cross streets, we'll accept cross streets, or a business down the block, like just any address that we can put into our algorithm works. And so because of that, people only have to give us information that they feel comfortable giving us. Uh, and we can get started giving food recommendations to all those folks.
I really liked what you were saying about solving for potential, biases or inequitable access to these food pantries on kind of a human level. But we also hear about like concerns for bias being built into AI models. I'm curious if that's an issue that has affected you in the delivery of your service, or if that's something that, because of your kind of lightweight data requirements, hasn't been such an issue.
Yeah, as far as biases in AI models, so far it hasn't been a real issue for us, because the only signals in those models right now are the ratings and the text that folks leave about the food pantries. Um, and we aren't using external data sources because they just don't exist.
Hmm.
Like there just isn't a lot of information about food pantries in America right now. So we don't have other seed data that we would use to inform our models. And our business is entirely client focused. We have some tools for providers to help them sort of understand all of the people that are coming to their doors and saying, I found out about you on Lemontree. So we do have that stuff, but that's much less of an AI focus on that side right now. So I'm not, we're not that worried about bias yet.
Speaking of not having a lot of data about the services available, the food pantries available, um, blew my mind when you mentioned that there's more food pantries in America than there are McDonald's. I just
Yeah.
unreal. And yet it sounds like most food insecure people don't access food pantries. So my question is that beyond Lemontree's specific solution, like what role do you think technology should be playing in redesigning like our social safety nets?
Yeah, I think the reason that people don't access food pantries so often is, first of all, the information. They just don't know that there's a food pantry around the corner from them. And that sort of stigma and hospitality issue where they aren't sure if they're supposed to go to the food pantry, because in mass media or whatever, we have a different picture of the kind of person that goes to a food pantry. And so it may be harder to imagine yourself as somebody who goes to a food pantry. And Lemontree is breaking that down. A great example for that I bring up from this tech startup world is Uber. Like before Uber existed, it was very rare for people to call a private black car to come pick them up on the corner. Like I think it was mostly a New York thing. Like you definitely wouldn't do it in other cities too often. I I have a lot of experience standing outside of, music venues, waving my hand at random cars, hoping that they were a private car that would pick me up and take me home, which was very strange and sort of unsafe, honestly, looking back at it. And so Lemontree is doing the same thing that Uber did for that experience. Uber made that experience mainstream. Of now everybody has the Uber app on their phone, and they pull out their phones and are completely comfortable calling a private car to come pick them up and take them wherever, all over the country, like outside of New York, everywhere. People have the Uber app on their phones. And so Lemontree is planning on doing the same thing for food pantries, where it once was a very specialized process that was only for a small group of people. We just want to make it so easy and normalized that it's mainstream so that everybody is comfortable pulling out their Lemontree app on their phone and finding their nearest food pantry and stopping by.
If a lot of the people who need food assistance aren't using the food pantries, does that suggest that there's ultimately a lot of food going to waste from the pantries, like if they're not able to fully serve their community?
Absolutely. Not only is there a problem of food going to waste, there's also a problem of getting food to places where the demand is the greatest. Because right now, the food banks just sort of have to guess based on the information that the food pantries are reporting back to them. And what Lemon Tree does is because we're sending individuals to food pantries directly, and those individuals are telling us whether or not they visited, we're building up this data set that tells you exactly where the food demand is in the city, where people are going to food pantries the most, and where people live where they want a food pantry, but they have to travel quite a far ways to like find one. And so those are awesome opportunities for opening new food pantries in those neighborhoods.
And do I understand that Lemon Tree, your scope is nationwide? Is that right?
Right now, we're in 11 regions, including all of New Jersey, but it's mostly cities on the East Coast. We're looking to expand westward as soon as we can.
That's awesome. I mean, it sounds like a really amazing way to scale the impact that you're already having. Um, I'm already hearing kind of that virtuous cycle of serving your clients more effectively, reporting back to the food pantries how they can be more effective, and ultimately like balancing out where there's unequal access as well as unequal food distribution. So that's really cool that you'll be continuing to expand across the country.
Sam, just looking at sort of just the intersection of like AI and social services and just thinking about things more broadly, what do you feel like could be the biggest opportunities or like maybe even some risks that as more organizations adopt these technologies could sort of show up?
I think what I'm most excited for is to bring all of these innovations that people are building into the nonprofit sector. Because, like I said at the beginning, these for profit companies have such a focus on making life easier for people who have a lot of disposable income to spend on these different products. I think it is so important that we as humanity make sure that these innovations that we're building are also applied to services in the nonprofit sector. And it will just help us scale the accessibility of those services so much faster to so many more people empowered by AI.
Yeah. And then just thinking about like, there are going to be critics out there and like people who think about like that technology solutions for social problems are just band aids and they're distracting us from like the root causes or addressing any of the root causes. How do you respond to that criticism? And how does Lemon Tree's work sort of relate to that broader systemic change?
Yeah, interesting. My whole career has sort of been based on this idea that technology empowers people and it makes people's lives better. I think, looking back in hindsight over the 15 years that I've been building the internet, I think there are some things on the internet that have not improved humanity in the way that we might have thought they would 10 years ago. And again, I think that's because of sort of these profit motives that come in and uh, create products that sort of have adverse effects in weird ways. And so that's why I think it's so important to fund and apply technologists into the nonprofit sector.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And just connecting the dots between your political background, right? And then also thinking about what your work at Lemontree, right? And essentially your work is creating that infrastructure that could potentially inform policy decisions around like food assistance, right? Do you see a role for Lemontree's data and insights like in shaping government programs like SNAP?
Absolutely. Right now, unfortunately, what we're seeing in the government is that the government's stepping back from providing support to people who are experiencing food insecurity and hunger. They We just heard this horrifying news that they're getting rid of the hunger report. The government is no longer interested in measuring hunger in America. They're going to pretend that it doesn't exist. That's their solution right now to hunger in America, is to ignore it and just pretend that it's not a problem. So in these moments where the government steps back, nonprofits need to step up. Like, we need to step in and start building the infrastructure that can measure hunger and create real solutions for how we can distribute food between each other as a community, because no American should go hungry in 2025. It's wild to me. We're one of the richest nations and we still have such a huge hunger problem. And there's so much food, there's so much wealth available. It just needs to get to the people that need it, because every human deserves groceries. Every human deserves to eat. And Lemontree is working on that.
There's obviously a lot of urgent need for what you're doing to continue to build and scale in the next few years. But thinking out a little bit farther, 5 and 10 years down the road, are there innovations that are really exciting to you? Or for that matter, are there specific challenges that you're anticipating having to solve?
Yeah, it's interesting thinking about sort of food distribution and how food maneuvers from a warehouse in New Jersey to a food bank to a food pantry. Right now, Lemon Tree is happy to sort of be hands off on those areas so that we can focus on the client experience and making sure that clients show up. But that's a space that seems really critical to the food infrastructure of food pantries, as well as sort of helping food pantries sort of manage their different clients.
Another thing that's coming to mind is that food insecurity would tend to intersect with housing and healthcare, employment challenges. Do you have thoughts on like how you might ultimately integrate food assistance, technology, and solutions with other social services?
We have a few great partners that are focused on other social needs. And I also think there's a lot of really interesting things about Lemon Tree's technology platform, particularly around its feedback loop, that could be generally useful in other kinds of nonprofits.
I really love that particular aspect of what you're doing. When you talk about trying to bring dignity to the clients, ensuring that they have a way of kind of reporting that experience back is a great way of encouraging that.
And we heard from a few clients that these are questions that they just have never been asked before.
Yeah.
So when we asked them how their experience at the food pantry was, often in our space, a lot of folks have a lot of fear around asking that question because they imagine that people will have, a list of complaints about what they didn't like at the food pantry. But we've actually experienced the exact opposite. 90% of our reviews, if not more, are glowingly positive, and people are so grateful and excited to even be asked these questions, because it's just not a typical part of the food pantry experience historically.
Yeah, it's funny because I can imagine having all those same concerns being on the client side of the equation. And yet, when I think about the times that I've volunteered in food banks, um, I wasn't there to try to look down on people or treat them badly or be judgmental. I want to help them and I want to make sure that they do have a good experience. So, kind of creating a way of communicating that. It's really great innovation.
Yeah. We're all one community. It's just neighbors feeding neighbors. It's not, there's there's no like tiers or hierarchy to it at all.
I imagine that despite the success that you guys are having in this challenge, that there are still a lot of big challenges, if not daunting challenges. The classic magic wand question: if you could wave a magic wand and fix one thing, what do you think you would tackle?
I think the big thing, especially now, is looking at funding right now, because government funding isn't as abundant as it was a year or two ago. It's hard to maintain the funding to sort of operate at the scale we would like to, especially when you're talking about growing into other cities. I would love to sort of have the resources to expand across America much more quickly than we have so far. So I'm excited about that future when we're able to do that.
Sam, something I'm really curious about is, as someone who's made this transition from commercial tech to social impact, what has surprised you the most about working in this space?
It's surprising how similar it is, honestly, to commercial tech. There's always, I've worked at some very cool startups that were working on very cool things. For example, I worked at a live music subscription platform where you would pay $25 a month and you could go see DJs and different musicians. And our mission was to make live music as accessible as like just going to a bar. Like if you're going out with your friends, why not go to a concert instead of just going to a bar that doesn't have live music? And so that was a very cool company. I was surrounded by a bunch of really cool people and I got to go backstage at like cool concerts and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, you're still just making a product for people to use, and people are the same everywhere. Like the kids who are trying to get into a club to like see their favorite DJ are the same as the people who are looking for a food pantry down the street. And so lots of things that I built for Jukely, that was the live music subscription service, are also applying to the work that I'm doing for Lemontree, because finding a concert venue to go to see a DJ is not that different than finding a food pantry to pick up your groceries for the week. We're still doing a recommendation algorithm. We're still building out this dashboard of your upcoming food pantry visits, things like that. So it just continues to stun me how these same sort of languages just apply in all these different situations.
Yes, yes. The people and the infrastructure remain similar, except the context changes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and often when you're an engineer and you're just in code, like you're just solving a programming problem. So the context isn't something that you're taking into account. In fact, even this morning, sometimes I have these moments where I step back and I'm like, isn't it amazing that I get to work full time on helping people find food pantries? Because often when I'm in the code, I'm just trying to like solve, some sort of JavaScript problem. And I'm not really thinking of the big picture of like what I'm working on or why I'm working on it or what I'm doing. So it's so cool to take a step back and be like, wow, my full time job is helping people find food pantries. That's so awesome.
That is awesome, actually. For our listeners who are like inspired by this conversation that we're having, right? What's one concrete action that they could take? Whether they're technologists, potential users, or just people who are passionate about food security.
Yeah, so Lemontree has a couple ways for people to get involved. You can obviously donate. We're a nonprofit. We love donations. So that's foodhelpline.org/donate. We also have a volunteering program where we offer corporate virtual volunteering for folks to organize with their team. And that's also at foodhelpline.org. So those are great ways to get involved. And beyond that, I would say go to foodhelpline.org, go up to, I actually just shipped this yesterday, I think, like a couple days ago. Go up to the search icon in the menu, and you can use that to just type in your address, and you can find the food pantries that are near you and see if they need any volunteers. Give them a call, see if they need any help. I think that's a great way to get started in the food access space. And it's a great way to meet your neighbors. Like it's just such an incredible way to get involved in your community. So many of us just we live in our apartments, we go to our jobs, and then we come back to our apartments, and we don't really get involved with our neighbors. So volunteering at a food pantry is a great use of your time. And yeah, you'll feel amazing. It's awesome.
Well, if Sam's story of turning code into compassion inspired you, hit subscribe so you never miss a conversation with innovators who are reshaping our world. And if you know someone working at the intersection of tech and social good, share this episode, because the best ideas spread when people like you pass them along. For Valencio Cardoso, I'm Roman Burkott. Until next time, stay curious, stay conscious.